sonicstate.com.
Yeah, Korg MS-20. I didn't actually own one of those until about 10 years ago, and the first synth I bought new was a Korg MS-10, which is kind of a cut down version with a single filter. And I remember catching the train to Leytonstone. There's a music shop out there, and coming back with it in a box, and because my mum didn't have a car. I remember carrying it for hours and hours and hours from the bus station to the place where I was going to have a jam with the friend who played the bass. And all I remember is I was really excited, and then when I opened it up and kind of tried to get it to make sounds, it didn't really kind of do anything that I expected. It has a very unique sound, and I guess it wasn't the sound I was looking for.
I was in The Cure, and I was talking to Korg about a possible endorsement deal, and because we were English, and American bands are endorsed up to their eyeballs, and we never did any of that kind of stuff.
But the MS-20 is a different beast because of the dual filters, the high pass and the low pass, and the resonance. The interaction between those, it's very organic, and it's got lots of stray harmonics. I think Chemical Brothers used it a lot for sort of screaming, weird synth sounds and unusual things. I mean, it's a great synth. Slightly limited, but I mean the fact that it's got a patch bay and you can use it for pitch to voltage is very good. You can plug something in and have it track.
And this guy approached me from Korg, and I was like, yeah, it sounds good. And he's like, well, what you're interested in? And I said, well, the M1's an incredible sounding instrument. So we were talking for about 6 months about this. And then finally the North American Cure tour started, I think it's 1989.
But it's very desirable. There was also an MS-50, which was an expander module for it to make, to continue the sort of modular theme, and an SQ-10. And those, I used to have all three of those, and I remember trying to use them in various mixes that I was doing, and I ended up giving up because it took so long to set anything up on that was of any use that, if you wanted to change the sound, you were very reluctant to reach for it and go, oh, that'll do it, because you'd lose the sound you'd spent ages setting up. I think in the end I used to keep the MS-20 set up as a particular sound I used to use, and that's kind of what it was for the era. I've still got one, and I don't use it as much as I used to, but it's a great synth, and I'm definitely going to be hanging on to it.
And I phoned him from the hotel in New York, and I said, look, we're doing the MTV Awards in LA in 2 weeks, live. And I had an M1 in my hotel room within half an hour.
Well, yeah, there would be surprises. Like I remember, I think it was probably Eno who was the first one who would play the Prophet 5 by holding a set of notes and then changing patches.
If we go into the edit section, which I've got to find, I'm going to remind myself how to do it. Okay.
And then using the rhythm and the patches, he would select hitting the buttons to come up with a new sound and play it that way. So things like that, we didn't necessarily think about, oh, let's build it so we can do that, but it was always fun to see people do things like that.
Okay, hold on a second.
Well, yeah, we went through 2 different tape drives. The first one we had, I think the company went out of business or something. They didn't work great. So the second one's actually worked pretty well. But yeah, that was the only thing we could do. There was no other way to back up the digital storage.
No, that's not right.
There was a company called Pratt Reed that made keyboards back then. They had made keyboards for over 100 years, and there were other people doing things similar as far as voice assignment and having keys that can be read in that way. So it was a keyboard that was set up to be read digitally, as opposed to the old-fashioned string of resistors that everybody used in the monophonic synths before that. So the keyboards we were able to get, we just used them in a different way. We actually had a microprocessor reading the keyboard as opposed to having, specialized digital logic doing it. Oh, well, sure. I mean, the Evolver line of synths actually uses the same low-pass filters, analog filters that we use in the Prophet 5. The oscillators are very similar. We also use Prophet VS oscillators in there too, but it's basically, we want that same filter sound. The Evolvers obviously take it much beyond that with all the other things we do in there. Yeah, the same basic core is there.
One thing about the D50 is that it's not the easiest thing to program.
You're watching sonicstate.com when you should be at school.
Now, if I was to walk up to you at a party, for instance, and say, I've got a virus, I'd like to pass it on to you. Although they sound god-awful nowadays, owning one of these back in the 80s was the equivalent of being re-kid. It's like, I'm not in the 80s, I'm talking back in the 80s, I'm in the 70s. Come on, think serious, think of Phil Collins.
Saw King Crimson at the old granary in Bristol. I'm trying to remember when, but I can't remember when. But it just completely blew me away, this sound of the Mellotron coming off stage live. Obviously, I'd heard it on Beatles records and stuff, but hearing this, sound coming out, I was in Stackbridge at the time, and we said, we've just got to get one of those, It was the size of a small bungalow, but then we found out they did a smaller version, so we got ourselves one of those, and it really opened up stuff. Suddenly we could do all this extravagant orchestral stuff.
The VCS3, as you'll notice when you look at one, I would say none of its components was adopted by any other synth manufacturers thereafter. It had this totally left field way of thinking about how to make a synthesizer. Not least that it didn't have a keyboard, really. I mean, it had a keyboard that you could buy and stick into it, but that wasn't the main thrust of it. The main thrust of it was these dials and a joystick.
When we got our first decent PA shortly after that, a Turner 2000 watt PA, and Barry, our sound man, on the sound check, said there's a bit of a whine coming from the Mellotron, so we sort of switched everything off, turned the volume right up, and there was a really high-pitched squeak coming from it. It wasn't even in tune, it was somewhere between E and E flat. And so I said, call up Mellotronics and see what's wrong. Maybe we can take it round tomorrow and get it fixed. They were in Portland Place at the time, in London. And so he rang up and said, we've got a high-pitched whine on the Mellotron. And he said, yeah, they do that.
Yeah, no, we did. She just sang into it, and while she was singing, I was manipulating it, and then whatever I was doing to it was kind of feeding back to what she was doing. So it was this really nice kind of live interaction. And the more I was making it kind of wail, the more she started to wail, and so I think it is a fantastic machine for treatments, and I think it's pretty essential, actually.
It kept breaking down, so we got a second one. So we had two Mellotrons in case one broke down. And when the band broke up in sort of chaotic circumstances, managers disappearing, and suddenly you get road crew that you'd never met before. Hi, I'm George. Just for the day. We lost track of where all the equipment went. They were in various lockups around London. And our two Mellotrons were never discovered, because when our manager did a bunk, the band split up. I nicked the back line acoustic gear and stored it in a friend's house. And we never found the Mellotron. So either they're still in a shed somewhere in London, or some garage owner found these two strange white keyboards and didn't know what to do with them.
I suppose if you had a flute part that you wanted to sound really kind of soft focus and atmospheric, you'd put it into the VCS3, filter it a bit, take all the bottom end out, and put it into that dreadful reverb, and it would just instantly be there straight away. And nothing else would get you there quite as fast, if that's where you want to go.
I did play the very Mellotron that the Beatles used on Strawberry Fields and all the rest of it. Because by a sheer fluke, I ended up playing on the Imagine album, and while I was in the studio wandering around, there was this proper old Mellotron, you know, that size of a bungalow. 2 keyboards and all these bossa nova rhythms. It's great, you know. So I asked Mal Evans if he could switch it on. Mal Evans was the Beatles roadie at the time. He said, yeah, sure, so he switched it on. Fooled around, you know. So that was something to,
A magic moment.
yeah, a good dinner party anecdote, I suppose. Or maybe not.
That's a good video anecdote.
You be the judge.
You're watching sonicstate.com.
Welcome back. Next up, it's the JVC 820. It's not even a synthesizer. JVC. And it's imaginatively, I can't say it. Sonicstate.com. Because I'm worth it.
Any Mini Moog jokes?
I haven't got any Mini Moog jokes except that on tour we do spend an inordinate amount of time trying to make really wet fart sounds with the filter and the LFO.
I was going to bring that up actually. So do you think the Mini Moog's the best for making wet?
Yeah, because it's got quite a lot more liquid in the filter than and it has that fat sound.
Okay.
Yeah, you can win hands down with a Mini Moog on that one.
Now I hear you say, what's the Professor been up to since I last saw him? Well, there was my 3-week stay in the celebrity Big Brother house.
Hello, Big Brother! Yes! I can't believe I'm here.
Who are you, mate? Back in the 70s, maybe you were someone. Yeah, you're just like the rest of us.
You are beautiful, no matter what they say. Do you like what you see? Do you like what I've become? Waste of my time. Stupid show. Can you open the door, please?
There was that good-natured misunderstanding on the pop panel game, Never Mind the Pillocks. And my triumphant few days on Get Me Out of This D-List Celebrity Jungle.
Yeah, something bit me. It was red and yellow and had a big spiky ass. What bit me? We're miles from anywhere.
As you can see, it's been a busy year. Let's move on with the countdown.
What made it so weird at the time was the context in which it was used. Martineau was a cellist, and he was integrating effectively a synthesizer into a classical orchestral situation and writing pieces of music specifically for it. He later became a professor at one of the major Parisian music universities and taught the instrument to students there, and it's continued to be used to this day in orchestras around the world.
sonicstate.com